Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and we get a new adaptation of A New Hope from Marvel Comics in a very strange way in this episode. Also, the Droids comics are coming to an end in this episode. It's quite an episode. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. What we're looking at this time is the final story arc from the Droids comic book series. From Marvel Comics, their Star imprint here. Now, I say story arc. Most of the time when we're looking at the Droids and Ewoks comics, the Star comic stuff from Marvel, there aren't really story arcs per se, except for Lost in Time, that had one Droids part and one Ewoks part. They all tend to be just individual stories in each issue. Yes, they're broken up into different parts of the stories in each issue, but just one issue per story, that's it. That is not the case for the final 3 issues of Droids, which ran only up to issue number 8. That makes this issue 6, 7, and 8. We start with issue number 6 here. Okay. It says up there, first of a 3-part saga. In the corner, special Star Wars as seen by the Droids with scenes you never saw before. And thank goodness we didn't, because we would have laughed our way out of the theater in most respects. We have kind of a cool little movie poster thing going on here. We've got C-3PO and R2-D2 in the center, Millennium Falcon at the bottom. We've got Luke, though not really sure what's up with his costume there, with Leia and Han and Chewbacca over off there to one side. On the other side, Vader battling Obi-Wan Kenobi, with both having yellow-colored lightsabers. A little bit odd at this point. This is the issue that was released in October of 1986, but it's only the first part of 3. The second issue is number 7, okay, from December of 86. Says second of a 3-part saga up the top. Star Wars as seen by the Droids. New scenes. New adventure. Up there in the corner. We have Vader's face here, and in his eyes, C-3PO and R2-D2 saying, uh-oh. That's right. Apparently, Vader is looking at them, and in one eye seeing C-3PO saying, the other one saying, oh. Strange. Cool effect, I guess, but strange and not really all that logical, as if the Star comics are ever really logical. And then we get the final issue of the Droid series, and this one is touted as being the last of this storyline. Nothing in the issue says it's the last issue of the series whatsoever. From February of 1987, issue 8 says last of 3 parts, Star Wars as seen by Droids. Not by the Droids, but by Droids. We have C-3PO and R2-D2 watching the duel between Vader and Kenobi. R2 makes his little beep and boop sounds, and C-3PO says, I'm afraid, R2, that says it perfectly. You can find these days in the pages of Star Wars Omnibus, Droids, and Ewoks. And this also introduces somewhat of a new creative team. You may recall that up until issue number 5, the whole series was written by Dave Manak with pencils by John Romita. Well, that changed in issue 5, where we wound up with a guest writer and guest artist. Now we are back to Dave Manak doing the writing, but it's Ernie Colon, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, doing the pencils this time around. So we're back to the original writer, but we now have a different artist on the series. Now, the story is what it says. It is an adaptation of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, seen through the eyes of the droids, focusing on them, and done in a droids comic/cartoon, goofy sort of way that does introduce new, and I can't believe I'm saying this, apparently canonical elements into the events of A New Hope. And yes, I mean canon in the sense of C-level canon, continuity type stuff, not something that is in canon, out of continuity, or G-canon. This is not on par with Lucas's own filmmaking itself, in both terms of continuity, validity, and storytelling prowess here. So it begins with sort of a quasi-crawl a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So they've already screwed it up. They've got a long, long time ago instead of just a long time ago. 2 droids, R2-D2 and C-3PO, are in service aboard a royal transport, a transport under attack by an Imperial battle cruiser. This is 1986. It is almost a decade since the release of A New Hope in theaters, and they still can't draw the blockade runner or the Star Destroyer correctly. There's a lot of stuff in this issue drawn weird. They're a little bit closer to the original Marvel interpretations of it than the film. Even then, though, it really stretches credulity to be 9 years after the film and still not able to present film-style vehicles correctly. Now, with some different dialogue and such, we see the way the film begins. The Tantive 4 is attacked, C-3PO and R2-D2, after R2 gets the plans from Leia, hop into an escape pod, go down to the surface of Tatooine below, and Vader sends stormtroopers down to find them. This is where we pick up with our first original sequence. As R2 and 3PO are walking around, before they split up, R2 gets sort of sucked into a hole in the ground, and C-3PO races after him, only to wind up falling through himself. They wind up running into a bunch of mole creatures underground, who 3PO translates as saying, "Oh, they want us for dinner." Oh, you know this isn't going to go well. The way they put it in here is they say they wish to serve us, but it's like saying, "We want you for dinner," when it doesn't mean we want you to dine with us. It means we want to eat you. Same thing. They wish to serve us. They want to serve us to Gotar, a giant acid lizard underground. The droids get eaten, swallowed. R2-D2 does his overloading circuits thing where he's zapping electricity out of him like we saw back in, I believe it was issue number 2, the issue that's the cover of the omnibus here. And the giant acid lizard spits them back out to land back on the surface. Then they continue their walking to go their separate ways so they can both eventually on their own be found by the Jawa sandcrawlers. See? You didn't know that was happening in the background of A New Hope, did ya? And that is not quite the weirdest. I mean, it's weird, but I'm not sure if it's the weirdest part of the whole thing. We see them get bought by the Lars family. We see R2-D2 take off on his mission. C-3PO not sure what's going on there. Before Luke and C-3PO go and hunt for him then in the morning, we get more in the first issue of some weirdness here. R2-D2 has to make his way around a camp of sand people, of Tusken Raiders. His way of doing this is to hide underneath a bantha that is walking by. And he's eventually found when a Tusken Raider looks underneath the bantha. So it's like he's hiding under the bantha's butt or something, underneath his hair? Little weird. It's a droid suppository, folks. Little creepy. When found, he runs and runs and runs, chased by the Tusken Raiders, until he projects a large, angry C-3PO hologram, apparently in color, that scares off the Tusken Raiders. From there, we move on to what you would expect. R2 is found by Luke and 3PO. They're attacked by sand people. Ben saves them, takes them back to his home, until eventually they go to Mos Eisley to look for a transport for Ben and Luke, once Luke finds that Owen and Beru have been killed. And while they're inside the cantina, stormtroopers are searching for the droids. Dun dun dun! And with that, we end issue 1. Next issue, Han Solo, Man of Mystery. Moving to issue number 7, which is part 2, entitled Darth Vader's Vengeance. I should note, though, that that's kind of like part 3, because just like the stories in Droids are always split into 2, or in the case of issue number 5, 3 parts, this one is split into 2 parts. In issue number 6, we get just Star Wars According to the Droids, but then we get part 2, The Force. Interestingly, though, book 2, issue number 7, doesn't have a part 2 in it. It's not split in half like most Droids issues. It's just one story. The first time we've ever seen that in the Droids comic series. For what it's worth, book 3 will do the same and simply be entitled The Last Jedi. Interesting. Droids in The Star Wars Adventure, book 3, The Last Jedi. We actually have a novel of that name that came out recently featuring Jax Pavin by Michael Reeves and Maya Catherine Bonhoff. So it's another instance of a reused title. Though hey, maybe that's okay because this one has an exclamation point on it. See, it's not the same. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, in part 2, as our heroes are making their deal inside the Mos Eisley Cantina, we see in the film that C-3PO and R2-D2 are trying to evade the stormtroopers by locking themselves inside the room and all that, but there's other stuff they wind up doing. You see, the other thing that they do is they hide inside the Acme Droid Services building, or Acme Droid Service singular, and they pretend like they're going to buy a bunch of parts, only they're not really going to buy them, they're just hiding. As they try to run off, the proprietor comes out saying, not without providing your Master Charge disc. That's right, Master Charge like MasterCard disc, you don't. All purchases are final. You can see the sign, right? And he's about to whoop butt on the droids until R2-D2 uses a little flamethrower type thing to zap him. That draws the attention of the stormtroopers who catch C-3PO. right there down, there you go. Sorry, it's kind of hard to angle this thing here. They're carrying C-3PO off until R2-D2 uses his saw that we saw in Return of the Jedi to bring down a scaffold onto the stormtroopers so the droids can escape to reunite with Ben and Luke as seen in the film. See, you didn't know that was going on either. They battle some stormtroopers, get into space, aboard the Death Star. You know, we have the Tarkin Leia Vader scene. Alderaan is blown up. The Millennium Falcon is pulled aboard the Death Star, and of course they take the scanning crew aboard, beat them up, take their clothing, and head out, where eventually they wind up finding that Leia is prisoner aboard the station. Again, all the same way that we saw it in the film. But we've got some new scenes here. While C-3PO and R2-D2 are left behind while Han, Chewbacca, and Luke go off to rescue Leia, and Ben goes off to deactivate the tractor beam, you know, we've seen them inside. You know, they're madmen. They're heading for the prison level. If you heard, you might catch them. Right? And then they head off claiming that they're going to go fix R2-D2 until eventually we see them again plugging into the system and helping our heroes out of the trash compactor. Well, in the midst of that, while we're apparently not focusing on the droids, we're focusing on them in the trash compactor, R2 and C-3PO have themselves another little adventure. They're going down a hallway and they run into a stormtrooper telling him where they intend on going, right? We have a Code 7 security clearance, sir. Code 7, eh? Very well. You want level 2. Follow me. And they take, the stormtrooper that is, takes the droids to an elevator, to a turbo lift, which just happens to be the same turbo lift that Vader and Tarkin really doesn't look very much like himself in clothing or facial features. They're going to get onto that elevator also. As they come out, it's like, uh-oh, yikes, it's Darth Vader! And C-3PO and R2-D2 get back in the elevator to get the heck out of there and slam it shut on the stormtrooper that was with them and on Vader and Tarkin, right? And this is just freaking strange, okay? To punish the stormtrooper for letting the droids get away by sealing the elevator, which inconveniences Tarkin and Vader, Vader uses the Force against the stormtrooper and apparently burns him to bits. So there's nothing left of him but the armor. He dematerializes him, burns him to ashes nuclear style using the Force. That's the first time we've seen Vader do that, and he'll never do it again either. Interesting story interpretation. On their way away from that encounter, they run into a sentry droid while they're being chased by stormtroopers. C-3PO kicks the sentry droid, which then starts sparking and such and overloading so that it explodes, distracting the stormtroopers so the droids can get away. And then we see them get to the terminal where they wind up contacting our heroes to get them out of the trash compactor. It links back up with the main storyline, but we didn't know that happened either. The rest of the story of issue 2 goes on pretty much like we'd expect. They save them from the trash compactor. They're all going to try to reunite back down at the Millennium Falcon, but as they're on their way, Vader encounters Kenobi and the lightsaber duel begins. Kind of a nifty little ending shot there in issue number 2. And of course, C-3PO and R2-D2 are blocked from joining the others by those two dueling. That, of course, is going to lead us to our next news scene as we move into Book 3, The Last Jedi, with a really cartoony-looking face for Vader there. Almost reminds me of Gonzo from Muppet Babies more than Vader himself there, his facial construction. And turns out that as we're seeing the duel between Kenobi and Vader, maybe it's when we move away and show our heroes running back to the Millennium Falcon, or maybe it's when we're showing them from above the waist. There's actually stuff going on that you didn't see in the film, my friends. Ridiculous. As they're battling, R2-D2 runs through, dodging underneath Vader's lightsaber to come out the other side. C-3PO is still trapped on the other side until R2 pulls out a little suction cup launcher, fires it to stick to 3PO's leg, and pulls 3PO through the duel between Darth Vader's legs. Then they're able to reunite back at the ship and get the heck out of there. That's something I never would have expected. Maybe that's going to be in the special, super special, uber duper edition of the films when eventually released on the new super high definition Blu-ray or released in 3D in theaters. Maybe that's why they canceled the 3D editions of Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith and presumably the classic trilogy for now. Maybe it's because they wanted to add that in and they needed more time to work that in with CG into the new version of the film. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid.
You will be.
And so, our heroes make it from the Death Star back to Yavin 4, but of course they are being tracked. There's a tracking device of some kind aboard the Millennium Falcon. They arrive at Yavin 4, they start making plans for the Battle of Yavin, and we never really hear much more about that tracking device. Well, never fear, friends. Issue number 8 of Droids is here to tell you what happened with that tracking device. Because you see, it wasn't just a tracking device. It was a homing droid that was attached to the Millennium Falcon. It drops off and tries to skitter away like a mouse droid. It's going to try to sabotage the base. It's heading for the main power generator. What do? The droids have to hunt him down. And it, by the way, it's dangerous because it can fire freaking rockets from its back. Of course, the rockets manage to incapacitate R2-D2 briefly. C-3PO is able to find the droid and slams shut a blast door on it, smashing it to bits. The day is saved just in time for R2-D2 to get back to the hangar to be loaded into Luke's X-Wing's astromech socket. The Battle of Yavin then occurs as we're used to up to this point. Kind of neat to see a droid-style interpretation of the Battle of the Death Star and whatnot. They leave and kaboom, or kavoom apparently, the Death Star is destroyed, and we get to see R2-D2 going, as he's coming out of the repair shop there, and heading into the award ceremony there at the end. Cue the ending music of A New Hope. Boy, is it a weird one. And not only is that the end of Star Wars According to the Droids, the adaptation of A New Hope from the Droids comic series, it is the end of the Droids comic series as a whole. Now, again, this is somewhat momentous in Star Wars publishing, you could say, because up until the launch of Ewoks, there was only really the main Marvel series as an ongoing series. We had the stuff in Pizzazz from time to time, but the main Marvel series was it. And it had its little spin-offs, with the annuals that were technically part of that run in a sense, and the Return of the Jedi adaptation that could be considered part of that run because A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back had been adapted within the main 107-issue run. So it was that series. Then they launched Ewoks, a very different Star Wars series. Then they launched Droids, another different Star Wars series akin to Ewoks, though, in that it's based on the cartoon on ABC. So up until May of '86, you had 3 ongoing Marvel series going. But then the regular Marvel series ended in May of '86. Now it's February of 1987, and Droids has had its swan song. Droids is over. This means the only Star Wars comics left being produced by Marvel are not only just Star comics, but now it's just the Star Ewoks comics that will continue on until issue number 14 in March of 1987 before even that series comes to an end. Marvel is really kind of dwindling down in their Star Wars production at this point. And while this was a weird and interesting ending to this series, it goes out with a whimper 6 issues shy of the number of issues that are going to be produced for the Ewoks series. So is this story, Star Wars According to the Droids, an essential read? Kind of tough. I'm going to go ahead and say no. It's not essential for modern Marvel or Droids readers, nor for Droids cartoon viewers. But A New Hope, of course, is an essential part of the Star Wars saga, and this is an adaptation of that adds new layers to it, albeit goofy little layers we don't actually need to see. It really is very much like, if you remember the Episode 1 Adventures one-off series that was released around the time of The Phantom Menace. That was a series where you had the oddball stories like Episode 1, Anakin Skywalker, Episode 1, Qui-Gon Jinn, etc., etc. And you had that Wizard 1/2 issue, and all of them kind of added new elements to The Phantom Menace that were kind of goofy like this in the background that you don't need to understand the entire movie, but that add more events within the scope of the movie. That's basically what this is. So in that sense, it's an interesting read, and probably the most unusual and interesting read of the Droid series. It's not all that good, But if you want to see how a kiddie kind of approach can be taken to a Star Wars film, this is one of the best examples of that, for better or worse. So, kudos to Dave Manak and Ernie Colon for creating what amounts to a weird, probably the strangest adaptation of A New Hope that we get outside of the Choose Your Own Adventure book at this point. With that, we wrap up this episode and the Droids comic series. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.